Hello, this is Dale Matthews, and I'm joined by Mike Jones. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Dale. How's it going?
So today is an interesting day in Josephine County events. What had happened over a period of time, I'll try to bring you up to speed for those who have not been following this story. There are a number of people in the mining community. You know, a large part of Josephine County was based on mining and logging, of course. The people in the mining community have for quite a while had some contentious relationship with the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM. And BLM is saying, well, you don't have the right to do this mining. And the miners are saying, hey, buddy, you go all the way back to 1866, updated by 1872 laws, and it says, yes, we do, and you cannot interfere with that. Why don't you pick up the ball from there, Mike?
Essentially, here a few days ago, I'm not exactly sure exactly what day it was, but a deputy accompanied a BLM Ranger out to this mine and served a cease and desist order to the miner there, and I believe that it had a date on it for that they had to be out by. They had to leave the premises.
Now, this would be a deputy that comes from the sheriff's department. I know sometimes the terminology can be a little confusing.
Deputy?
Right? Didn't you say a deputy company?
Yeah, I did say deputy. How is that confusing?
Okay, maybe I'm the only one's confused. Occasionally I'll say police officer when I mean a variety of different kinds of people. It was definitely in the sheriff's office. It was the county's business, nothing to do with Grants Pass City, whatever they call their people, sergeant. This is a deputy. Anyway, so there were the people involved in mining used to be really organized. They would show up to a county commissioners meeting. Mike and I mainly talk about county politics, and they would all wear t-shirts and everybody paid attention to them. They were all speaking, they were all singing from the same hymnal. Then they had some internal strife and etc., and it broke up into several little pieces, and now they don't come to those meetings anymore, basically. And when they speak, people go, oh, well, that's interesting. But the commissioners really don't listen very carefully to them. However, the commissioners did set up a mining advisory board, which has people on it from a variety of groups. So when the miners start calling each other, listen, they don't go to KJO, okay? You probably don't go to KJO anymore. They're not going to go directly to the newspaper because the newspaper is going to filter most of that news. What they do is they communicate among themselves through email, and they also talk to each other via Facebook and other social media. If you're not paying attention to what's going on in social media, then you're not going to understand what the Arab Spring, and you're not going to understand what's going on in community here because you're stuck in the old days. You're not you, but people like that are stuck in the old days of newspapers. So Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about, because Mike keeps very close track of what's happening on social media in the area. What did you start seeing and building up for this in social media, sir?
Well, it was probably 3 days ago when I saw the first posting, 2 or 3 days ago when I saw the first posting that there was a conflict between the miners and the BLM. I think it's specifically one miner in the BLM, but I think they're saying miners because of solidarity, I guess. But and there was a call out on a number of Facebook pages for people to come to Southern Oregon to assist in this assuring that the miners' rights wouldn't be violated. And I'm assuming that's a show of force. And so it has been so far. There's and now this is a nationwide story. It ended up on InfoWars here this morning, and And there's people putting YouTube videos out, and Oath Keepers is maintaining a website that has information on who's in charge of this and the logistics of people that are coming here, who they should get in contact with, where to donate money to this operation, etc.
Now, there are going to be those in the community, probably not our typical viewers, but there'll be those in the community who say, well, really, how big can it be? It hasn't made the front page of the Courier.
Right.
It's hard to know what to say about that. Listen,
yeah,
this is not going. Okay, there's a little story at the bottom of today's Tuesday's Courier, but they're a day late and $1 short on this, and they're not watching the buildup of forces, because the buildup of forces is not taking place on some piece of paper. It's taking place electronically. We're keeping track of it because that is the place. I mean, you want to understand young people, you can forget about newspapers, and they're not watching 60 Minutes either. Just look at the ads and you can tell who watches 60 Minutes, okay? It's not young people. So, so we keep track of what's actually happening in the community, that a lot of people go, I never knew anything about this. We have minors. So yes, it's important to know what organizing techniques people are using. And if you think that, nationwide, come on, Mike, you might be exaggerating a little bit. Tell them about a Facebook called Lock and Load. Tell them about Bundy Ranch. Tell them about the kinds of rhetoric that are being ratcheted up. Mike, please.
Well, it's commonly referred to in these stories, and there's been a whole bunch of stories that have been showing up. And if you're familiar with Facebook, you have your timeline and things that are coming through that, your news feed, as it were, coming through your news feed are a lot of stories about by websites like Lock and Load. Lock and Load News.
Lock and Load, yes. This is not their logo, but it's close.
Yes. And, We Love America or whatever. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different, and you never ever see these sites at all. These are just probably set up for the purpose of propagating this particular story. But they all have basically the same story: Bundy Ranch style standoff in Southern Oregon.
Now, everybody in our audience is going to know what Bundy Ranch is. However, I just got asked a question yesterday from a guy that says, explain Bundy Ranch to me. Okay. Okay. But there are some people who occasionally come in and they go, oh, look, here's a news show. Well, maybe I'll watch this. Mike, please explain to those folks who are experts on other issues, I'm sure. Give us a Mike Jones special compilation of what Bundy Ranch was about, if you will.
Okay.
This is unfair of me to do, but Mike knows.
Okay. Well, in the Nevada desert, there's a guy out there, Cliven Bundy, who's had a ranch on this property for many, many years, and I believe a couple of generations anyway. So he's been fighting with the BLM since the BLM was the BLM. And I think perhaps even before that, in terms of grazing rights and grazing leases.
Bureau of Land Management.
That's right. And so recently what happened was the BLM decided to take it up a notch and arrive on his, in his area with, armed people with, automatic weapons and, militaristic uniforms and vehicles and things of that nature. And they actually took some of his cattle, and there was a dispute. They say he wasn't supposed to have his cattle on this particular property. He said, I've got the right to do that. They actually took some of his cattle and were keeping them, and they ultimately ended up killing and burying a large number of them. Anyway, so there's this started ticking people off, and he started asking for help and a lot of people started responding to his ranch out there with their weapons and with their own camo uniforms and supplies and all that stuff, and they basically set up camp there. And so there was a standoff that made national news for probably a couple weeks. I want to say a couple weeks, maybe more, during that time. And there was some pretty tense moments where you had a large numbers of people walking up towards the BLM Rangers, and they had their guns drawn and aimed at these protesters. And there was a real good possibility that it was going to turn into another Waco type incident, or at least where there was an exchange of gunfire between them. And so anyway, that's what they're referring to when they say a Bundy Ranch style standoff is forming here in Southern Oregon.
So there are people who are concerned about the Constitution, especially locally. There are people on a national basis who are spoiling for yet another fight and watching and following what's going on in the nation and willing to go anywhere to participate in another Bundy Ranch style standoff with the federal government. There are people in this area who look like they're using this as an organizing excuse. There are people in this area that are going to try to capitalize on a story so that they get more advertisers or something. There's a lot of different kinds of people are involved in this, and I've often said, Mike and I, that about a quarter of what we do is to try to look at a story. About a quarter of what we do is looking at a story and saying, wait a minute. You guys don't have the facts here. We're going to try to tell you what the facts are. And one of the things that you need to internalize here is that Facebook and social media, whether you use them or not, are real big organizing tools for a lot of things in this community and all over the country. And when people are called in, especially from outside, they're showing up from Idaho or Florida or from Texas or from, I don't know, North Dakota or something, because they've seen it on Facebook. And you can't stop this, but you can try to keep track of what's happening and be aware of the fact that this isn't just, I heard my aunt sometimes shares pictures of the grandchildren. Yes, but it goes well beyond that.
Yeah, a lot of people now, just as many millennials are getting their news from the Daily Show, there are many other people of all age groups that are now getting their news primarily, if not secondarily, from Facebook.
I've had discussions with Dan Mancuso out at the IV News in Illinois Valley, of course, about the idea of buying a newspaper. It's kind of like buying a duck-billed platypus, or it's kind of like what? It's almost extinct. People are not going to get their primary news from the newspaper anymore. They're just not going to, and especially not this newspaper. It's not really a newspaper, the one that we have in town. The
one that doesn't even report it.
That's right. So we try to keep track of what's actually happening. So we will watch this kind of stuff. Okay, so now the TV station, KDE RV, Channel 12, they jump in and they do a story late last night, at least for the 6 o'clock news and for the 11 o'clock news, because Joseph Rice and Oath Keepers decided to get involved in this, and they went out in front of the sheriff's department. That's not where it used to be, but over in the jail, and they're out there with signs for two things. One of the things was, don't trample on our Second Amendment rights. There's a bill coming up in Salem that's going to cause us all kinds of problems. And the second reason they were there for was this standoff with the miners. Okay. So, Mike, why don't you tell us just a little bit about the Second Amendment rights part of that story? Because you and I both watched KDRV's coverage of that and how they chose one of the two stories and reported exclusively on that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I actually, to this moment, I was not aware that they were protesting two different things. I thought that and this may well be because of the KDRV story, that they were only protesting the Senate bill SB 941, and SB 941 is the has to do with firearm transfers and background checks. And that so now, instead of when you go to buy a gun from a dealer, you have to have a background check, which happens instantaneously. There's just a fee involved, and you basically get your gun over the counter. But if you wanted to sell your gun to your brother-in-law after this passes, you would theoretically have to then go to a firearms dealer and get a background check for your brother-in-law, and then you could transfer the gun to him, and it that may not sound too bad to some people, although many would say any intrusion on Second Amendment rights is too much. But this also could be as goofy as to extend to if someone at the range wanted to check out your gun, you would not be allowed to let him try out your gun and fire it or whatever without having a background check first. And so that's spawned a lot of resistance to the potential law. Again,
it's not people are saying, well, what about my anti-aircraft battery in my backyard? No, we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is that the way it's written, it doesn't mean that there's nothing good about it, but the way it's written at the moment, it looks as if that if your next door neighbor wanted to borrow your shotgun because he's going to go out practice or is going to go hunting or something, that you couldn't loan it to him unless he had a background check first. What? So
yes, because technically a transfer has taken place.
Right. Or as crazy as this, you're walking over a field and one of you steps over the barbed wire fence and the other one transfers his weapon to you while he steps over the barbed wire. Oh no, where's your background check? Oh, come on.
It's just ridiculous.
It's apparently it's the way it's written now. There's going to be, well, that's not what it says and not what it means. Okay. But that's the way it's being interpreted by some people. And so they're a little upset about it. And the reason that, was my understanding, that Joseph Rice and Oath Keepers went down in front of the sheriff's department with some handwritten signs and all, was that they wanted the sheriff to take a stronger stand. And the sheriff, in talking with that's Dave Daniel, no S on the end, thank you, no S in his name at all, he said to Channel 12, well, listen, I've already said that, I'm not going to be enforcing that. There's just really no time to do that kind of stuff. I'm just not interested in doing that. And but he took the opportunity. We've said many times on this show, you have to think about what their answer is going to be. And as long as you consider what their answer is going to be, then you're asking the right question in the right way. And so he used that opportunity to say, oh, and by the way, we don't have enough people to follow through on what this would be a misdemeanor anyway. And also, one of the reasons we don't have it is we haven't passed the levy. Oh, no, I don't think this is what they had in mind when they're out there doing this just before the vote for the levy. It's too bad that both of these things are taking place at the same time if they decided to do that. And then here's a hammer for him to use to hammer in the nail.
Right.
I need more money.
Right. And so how are we to interpret this statement? Would it be that, the only reason why I'm not going to enforce that law is because it's a misdemeanor and we don't have enough money for that? Well, let's see here. If you did have the money, does that mean that you would be enforcing that law, even though the charter says that that's a no-no?
Both sides deserve somebody to come after them with a bat. One side, you're saying, what are you doing? You're giving him ammunition, so to speak, if you can afford it, or if the government hasn't already bought it. You're giving him ammunition in order to get out there and push for the levy. On the other hand, as Mike just said, I don't think the sheriff thought this through either. is, oh, if you had enough money, then you'd be pursuing everybody about the Second Amendment. Really?
Yeah. You know what? I think you have to be careful about how rabid you are at pursuing your political goals, because it might lead you to say something that you don't actually intend to say. I'm hoping that he didn't actually intend to say.
If you're going to be that rabbit could come back and bite you.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so that's the last attempt at humor in this whole show, because it's not a very funny situation. It wasn't a very good one either.
One can hope.
So thank you very much. The point is that nobody's doing any political analysis of any of this. Come on, you guys, think about it a little bit. It's not going to be in the Courier. You can forget it. And Kjo, there's no way. There's no political analysis. Anyway, the idea is that both sides kind of bit each other on this one. All right, so that was the first story. So KDE RV does this. Oh, protesters are looking crazy. They're out there with signs, Oh, there's absolutely nothing to this, says the sheriff from behind his desk. Why, everything's going to be just fine. Okay, all right. It's a little bit of exaggeration, but not much. Yeah. Then, this morning, Mike, being the astute observer of social life as he is, he sees this posting. And just about the same time, we now know, so did somebody in the sheriff's office. And they alerted the sheriff about it. And the posting, before the story was completed, because sometimes they say breaking news, here's just words, and it was just words and a picture, and it wasn't words and this picture.
No,
this picture is of an oath keeper with an AR-15, apparently, and wearing camouflage. So you can barely see him, you see, because when people wear camouflage, including babies that are in their crib, you cannot see them. And he's checking out a clipboard with a vehicle that's coming in to someplace. And this is now the new picture that KDE RV has put up about a story that's played on tonight's news, and it'll probably be on again at 11. But Mike, tell us about the original picture and the role KDE RV has played, Channel 12, in ratcheting up this story to near the point of hysteria.
Yeah, I can do actually a little bit better than that. I can actually show you, because I knew, and actually Dale's a little off on the timeline of his story there. But
everybody says I'm a little off. Okay.
Essentially, we went to a meeting of the mining committee today, and when I told the sheriff that this story was out there, and that it appears that they had deployed a SWAT team to the location, he went like, what? We don't even have a SWAT team. So anyway, here is the picture. Here is the story. Knowing that the sheriff was going to get in contact with him and say, hey, what the heck's going on here? I knew that they were going to pull this picture. And so I took a screenshot on my phone, and they posted it
this morning. That's what I said. They posted it this morning.
Yes, right.
Can you zoom in on that? Because it looks like they're out there patrolling.
I absolutely can, but let's read on here. It says law enforcement authorities responded to what Josephine County Oath Keepers are calling the Sugar Pine Mine Security Operation. According to the Bureau of Land Management, they recently found out about the mining operation around Galice Creek. Officials with the BLM said they served a notice to the miners that were out of compliance. So law enforcement authorities responded. And so you look at the picture and you go, well, look at how they responded. There's a SWAT truck there. I mean, to anybody who's ever seen these, that's an armored vehicle. And, obviously a SWAT. He goes, we don't even have a SWAT team. He goes, I don't even know whose SWAT truck that is. Maybe that belongs to we
do know. Okay. He didn't know at today's meeting of the mining committee, but we do know, because I called and talked with Chief Landis, the Grants Pass City Police Chief. And I said, what do you think is going on with this? He said, well, that's our vehicle. Grants Pass City Police have a SWAT vehicle. And I said, so how did it end up in this story? And he says, well, it ended up in this story. So I did get a little detail wrong. It wasn't the sheriff's department that called KDRV. It was the city police that called KDRV. KDRV said about an hour ago that they had not been connected at all to the sheriff, and the sheriff has not called them back despite their repeated requests for him to call them back.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's an important part of the story. We're always going to try to get everything right. Okay, so it was Chief Landis that called the KDRV and said, really, this is not right because that's our vehicle, and that wasn't out there for this Bundy Ranch style showdown. That was out there because we were at the shooting range, and we go out on a periodic basis with our vehicle and we go do shooting. Okay.
Yeah, but these, just for people who don't know, the shooting range that they're talking about and Galice are quite a ways apart in the county geographically.
That's what he said. He said,
yeah.
How could they end up with this? And so I called and talked with Channel 12. I talked with Ashley Hall at Channel 12. You may recall, okay, set aside just for a second. Ashley Hall was the person I talked to when Channel 12 got the story about Simon Hare completely wrong. Simon Hare is not my favorite guy, and he has out and out completely lied to us in the past. Remember when I brought the thing to show that he had questioned the police and had questioned the sheriff and said he was padding his budget, and he cut the power rather than hear the proof, saying that playing that proof that he had not told the truth was disruptive. You think? To your career, maybe. So he's not my favorite guy. But Channel 12 sent out a reporter, and Mike and I were both there, and the reporter's right behind us. And she goes back, and the best that we can assume is that she had already made up her mind what the story was going to be. So when Simon Hare came up and did his oath of office on the very second day of January, I think it was, she reported and did a whole story based on one thing, that when Simon Hare came up to take his oath of office, that nobody applauded. And basically what a burn this was on Simon Hare. Why, he's got to be feeling pretty bad because nobody applauded. Well, thing is, the audience didn't applaud for any of them when they first came up. They applauded for each one of them, and pretty loudly for each one of them after they took the oath of office, including Simon Hare. Now, the applause for Simon Hare was less than that for the others, but it was not true. What she said was not true, and we had the videotape proof. And listen, yes, I do understand that politically this would make Simon Hare look kind of bad. Oh, look, he's not held in high regard by all kinds of people. That's, yeah, politically that's true. If you want to be a liar, right. We don't. And so we pointed the finger, two fingers, Mike and I, at Channel 12, and we said, this was not truthful. And they said, this is the first time this has happened in many, many years, and they went on the air to do like a, 5.5 second retraction. I mean, it really wasn't much, but
yeah, it was very fast.
Yeah, that really wasn't true. So we were happy to set the record straight, and Simon deserves to be criticized for other things, but don't lie. It's not necessary. Okay.
Right.
So, so this is Channel 12. So I call Ashley Hall. Well, I got her on the phone again. And so I'm asking her questions about this. And I said, you took the picture down and you replaced it with this one. She said, yeah. I said, so where did you get the picture and why did you run that? If you're going to run a picture of a SWAT vehicle from another law enforcement agency, why don't you just put up a guided missile frigate?
Right. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
They really didn't have any good reasons.
Yeah, makes sense.
They
but
just blew it.
Yes. However, they did change the picture, and so they must have had a reason.
They changed the picture because the chief called them, according to Chief Landis. He called them personally, and they changed the picture because it was the wrong picture attached to the wrong story. And I'm telling you, this thing about a SWAT vehicle out there. You can imagine what comes out of a SWAT vehicle is people that are dressed not like this guy, but in black and with helmets and with the cameras and all. Hey.
Absolutely. And when the story says, law enforcement authorities respond, and you see a picture of a SWAT vehicle, certain mental images begin rolling in your head. You know, you're heading down a path, and you know the picture. That's part of that story.
So our first reaction when Mike and I were talking about this is, holy shoot, what is the sheriff doing? I mean, this is going to escalate the problem instead of de-escalating the problem.
Right. Exactly.
So you don't show up with, I mean, you try to show up with officer friendly, or maybe, you know, some old lady with a flower or something. Sorry, old ladies. But I mean, what you do is you try to, you get Judy Aarons to bake them a cake.
Yes.
You don't walk in with, you know, you can't see their faces and they've got this black uniforms and it looks like, the UN has just arrived. That's not a good idea.
Right.
That escalates things. And if you really want to send the message out to all the rest of the world on Facebook, hey, lock and load, show up, look, the Channel 12 put this thing up of a SWAT vehicle. They're already bringing the SWAT vehicles. Hey, calm down. Stop yelling, Dale. And let's just try to be, there probably are a number of reasons why people should be upset. But really, I would rather that the sniper teams not start showing up.
Yes.
Now, we're already under scrutiny by the NSA. We know this. This is no joke. There are, I mean, just for the fact that there are some State of Jefferson people here, it makes them very nervous.
Yes.
And so this kind of thing is not responsible. We should not be encouraging this kind of thing. Hello, Sheriff. Hello, Joseph Rice. Hello, Channel 12. We should not be encouraging this kind of thing. And I say that there's just one person that can try to calm the waters a little and explain what the heck is going on. And that, in my opinion, is our new sheriff. He has a way that he might handle this. So I talked to him today. And before we went to this meeting, and I said, so what measures are you going to take to try to calm the waters? Because people are getting a little upset. He says, well, I'm not going to come on your show. Okay. He's been on the show before. No, I think the best thing to do is to try to, I'll just issue a press release. You're going to issue a press release? I mean, really? So we've got a little footage. It's the best that we can do quickly. We'll have even better footage later, but this was based on this afternoon's meeting. And so, Mike, why don't you play the footage that we have, and just be patient, everybody. This is instant availability. Go ahead, Mike, please.
Yes. And before I do,
yes.
The funny and ironic thing about this is that the sheriff is on our show in a much bigger way than he's ever been on our show before, even though he decided not to come on our show today. So here it is.
There was basically last week, a BLM Ranger was accompanied by one of my sheriff's deputies, one of my BLM deputies. We only have one, and that Ranger provided a cease and desist order to the claimants on the Sugar Pine mine to basically kind of stop what they're doing in essence. And I was unaware that was taking place at the time, obviously aware of it now, but it certainly ruffled some feathers to an end where now there is an active movement of a militia of sort that's being headed up by currently the Oath Keepers to ensure that this miner's claimant, the claimant to the mine is not, or his Fourth Amendment rights and due process are not taken away. Mm-hmm. And that very much concerns me and concerned me as well. Sure. That's part of our Constitution and something I firmly believe in. So I arranged a meeting and had met with the head of the Oath Keepers, Joseph Rice, and the assistant he's the assistant special agent in charge of the assistant SAC of the Eugene district of the BLM. I met with him as well to ensure, two things. Primarily, one, that the mine claimants, again, I think that's what it's called, the claim owner, that his right to due process is not violated, number one. And so I met with the BLM and wasn't sure that, in fact, his right to due process would not be and that they were going to basically let this go through the legal process and not go there, which I think is a really good thing. And that's the first part of it. I wanted to make sure that his rights were being protected. Secondly, though, I want to make sure that nobody's going to be hurt. It's a fairly large gathering of people they have up there. And
public safety.
It is a huge public safety concern for me. So I was able to coordinate that between the Oath Keepers and the BLM and the attorney for the claim owner as well. And there's been a meeting there, I understand, too, with the BLM and that attorney to just ensure that things are done properly. And if there's an argument, there's an argument, that it doesn't need to go to any kind of physical force or violence, and that's fine. I've been assured that the BLM has no intentions on removing him from that property or doing anything to him or for him with that property. When he was served the paperwork, it's my understanding, when he was served the paperwork to the cease and desist order, at the same time, he was handed the paperwork for an appeal process. And that's good. And I've spoken with him on the phone now twice to discuss basically this issue with him. And I think he was appreciative of that. So kind of a mushroom cloud, but I think it's going to work out okay. And that's, number one, that his rights are met, and then also the government gets their say, and he can go through the process and go down that route.
Well, so
Okay.
Well, just a couple little things, just little. I don't know if calling them a militia is a really good idea. Perhaps they do resemble one. And the use of the word mushroom cloud kind of made me go, what? Yes. Really? Oh, okay. Now, look, when you hear and I'm listening to the guy speak at this meeting, I'm thinking, well, he's kind of, putting a damper on it. Let's just not get excited. There are other people out there who are doing exactly the opposite. And they seem to be spoiling for a fight. I'm not saying all local people, but there are people who think it's time for a showdown with the BLM, and probably going to be the FBI special agent in charge. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? But that's BLM, same terminology. And and there are people spoiling for a fight, and they say they're going to come here, and maybe they're already arrived, or
they have.
Yeah. So
they have.
So yes, it's very nice to say, well, I've talked with everybody and everybody seems reasonable. Everybody is reasonable. We're not seeing that in social media. And again, this thing with social media, this is no small stuff. This is how people today get organized. They don't get organized through putting a classified ad in the Daily Courier.
Yeah. Takes too long.
Yeah. And
this happens instantaneously. You start posting stuff on the internet on sites where you already know these people are, you're going to get an instantaneous response. And that's pretty much what happened. Pretty impressive, actually, how quickly they're turning around, getting these people organized. So I think it requires parties on both sides of this issue to be thoughtful about what they're doing before they do it. Now, there can be some debate as to whether or not it was a smart idea to even serve the cease and desist order. The constitutional sheriffs have said that they are not going to do the bidding of the federal government in some cases, or perhaps even all cases. And, had the sheriff just said, hey, listen, if you want to serve this, this summons to the guy, I'm not going to be the guy to do it for you. And,
but what did he do instead, Mike?
Instead, well, they apparently, and I was just made aware of this here a little while ago. There's a deputy here working for the sheriff's department that is at least partially paid by the BLM, if I have any of this wrong, let me know. But this is the scuttlebutt I'm hearing, is that there's a deputy that is tasked with working for the BLM.
So you can understand a little bit, everybody, why it is that there would be local people like the Oath Keepers, like Joseph Rice, to say, hey, wait a minute. We want an assurance from our sheriff, as they felt that they had with Gil Gilbertson. And there's Gil Gilbertson's hand in this too. Yes, he's no longer the sheriff. However, he's involved with this project as well. You can see the influence here. And there are people that are saying, now wait, what we wanted was a constitutional sheriff, whatever your interpretation of that is. And basically what that means, as I understand it, is that when the federal government says you're going to do this, we say, now hold on a second there, Bunky. We've got a charter in our county, and we are not going to let our citizens be subject to your bureaucratic whims. And here's what we're going to do about it.
Right.
We're not going to allow you to trample all over these people, or we are going to allow you to make them obey these laws that you have. And then there's the 1866 and 1872 mining laws, and this program doesn't last for 3 days in a row, so you're going to have to hear a little bit more about that from somebody else at another time. But and we will go back and we'll look at some of those things. But there are some rules that say, hey, listen, we were apparently a county before this state was a state. And there are certain rules in America about mining, particularly, that makes it not okay, not constitutional, not according to the agreements that we have with the federal government. There are certain things that miners especially are supposed to be able to do. And so they're calling upon the sheriff to take a stand. And what the sheriff has decided to do is to issue a press release. So we had some questions for the sheriff during this.
I don't know what you got for me.
Right. There obviously is a ratcheting up in this situation in Galice.
Yes.
There are people outside of this area who are using terms like Bundy Ranch, and they're getting pretty excited about this. You've decided to issue a press release. You think that's going to be enough?
Yes. For now. Yeah, the state of the BLM is not going to take any action. So at least I've been told that they're not going to take any action. Therefore, if they don't take any action, there should be no reaction. And then you have cooler heads prevail.
On the editorial side, we've supported you right from the very beginning and are saying to people on our daily show that if there's one person in this county that can avoid this getting out of control, it's you personally. So a press release, you're hoping that's enough?
I've met with all parties involved so far, and obviously you know what's going on from what I have done, and I think we're going to be just fine.
Thank you.
I noticed Channel 12 did a report this morning, and they showed a picture of a SWAT truck deployed in the area. What's the purpose of that?
I have no knowledge of any SWAT truck.
Yeah. So you guys aren't doing any of that?
No,
yeah.
Of course not.
Then I guess it's a file picture or something.
No, yeah, it must have been. It must have been. There's no SWAT activation of any way, shape, or form that I'm aware of. I think my true belief is that there will be no activity of that nature at all. Period.
We'll contact Channel 12 and try to correct them.
Yeah, that would be great.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time.
Yes, that's right.
Our citizens need good communication.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Frankly, that's inappropriate if it isn't being used. Josephine County doesn't have a SWAT vehicle like that. And if it isn't being used and it is referenced, it's almost insightful, which is really not appropriate.
And you may be that, I'm not just, now it's just conjecture, but that could possibly be maybe from the Bundy file footage or something to that effect. Who knows?
So you don't have snipers on the hills then?
I don't have snipers at all.
Check the donuts.
No, my law enforcement, my deputies are not going to be in that area. It's very remote.
My deputies are not going to be in that area. See, this is one of the things that Oath Keepers is asking for the sheriff to do, is to have a presence to stop the BLM from doing outrageous things in their opinion.
Right.
Yeah. Press release, the buildup and the rhetoric that's happening. Simon Harris said it was insightful. I don't think that's the word that he meant. Insightful means like, I have insight on this. I think he means it's inciting, people to riot or something. It's insightful.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. Right.
Yes,
But,
and what we're talking about right now is an anecdote of
it's an antidote.
Oh yes, yes, of what happened this afternoon.
Yeah,
So-
well, that's just sort of the slight comedy side from Mike this time, but gee, I hope the sheriff is right. Don't criticize him. No.
Well, listen, you know what? And
yes, we have the ability to do that.
Here is news that is not being reported, and that news is that he has met with both sides. Apparently in person. So I would imagine that if the BLM truly it has no plans to show up in force, then there's not going to be any military standoff between the two parties, and so this thing is going to diffuse. And hopefully that's the truth.
But here's the question for you as our audience. We're going to bring this in for a landing, but here's the question for you as an audience. Perhaps it's okay that you haven't heard any of this because this is going to go away. And so why should we get upset about something that's going to go away? It's just better that we don't know about it. Do you really believe that? Wouldn't you rather know the background about this in case this happens a second or a third time or something does happen? Why is it that this is the only place that you can hear that the sheriff is somewhat concerned, the oath keepers are somewhat concerned, that we're telling you what's happening on social media, that people really are coming here in order to participate in what they think is going to be a Bundy Ranch style showdown with the BLM? Lock and load, lock and load. Why are we the only ones? Well, that question answers itself.